kneeling little pelvic mobility series. I'm gonna be in this position for a little while, so I like to have a little something underneath that kneeling knee. So your base position is this half kneeling position. From the side, it looks like this. I'm tall and stacked over this kneeling leg. So my center of gravity, my ears, my shoulder, my hip are all over this knee. And I'm gonna maintain that for the most part. So this is the base position. From here, I'm gonna maintain that nice tall position, and I'm just gonna start to find a bit of a pelvic tuck and untuck. So I'm letting that pelvis tip forward, and then I'm tucking it under into a posterior pelvic tilt. So the untuck, I think of this like I have a tail, and the tail is untucking, it's lifting away from the floor, and then I'm tucking it between the legs, dropping it towards the floor. And you're gonna move from one position to the other fairly dynamically. You could certainly pause and hold this bit of hip flexor and quad stretch. But the intention of this motion is really more about the movement and the control. I'm trying to keep my rib cage still and finding that motion in my pelvis. I'm accessing this pelvic tuck by using my lower abdominals, and in this case that hip, to get that pelvis underneath me. And then I'm gonna find 3 different planes of motion. I'm gonna shift so if this movement was in this plane, forward and back, I'm then gonna create some motion in a more rotational plane. So I'm gonna find a shift. I'm gonna pull my pelvis towards this front leg, drawing that leg back as I pull this right hip bone towards this knee. And then I'm gonna slide that leg back, rotating the pelvis this way. So I'm gonna get the headlights in my hip bones rotating forward and back. I should have mentioned that this motion is done from a slightly tucked position. So I'm not here, I'm in that nice extended hip, pelvis under ribcage position, and then I suck this thigh bone back. Think about pulling this point on my knee and this point on the pelvis towards each other, and then I'm gonna push those 2 points away. This knee moves forward and back. It doesn't move in and out, and the contact in my foot is consistent throughout. So those are 2 dimensions. I move this way, I move this way. Now we're gonna move this way. So this one's a bit funky. I'm gonna think about dropping this hip, letting this hip lift, and then I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna drop this hip, letting this hip lift. And these motions might not be massive, but we're just creating this little, now if I had headlights in my hip bones, they're pointing straight ahead, but they're just turning this way. All right, again, my base position is that nicely stacked position, pelvis under rib cage. So I'm a little bit tucked right off the get-go. Okay, so 3 dimensions of movement in this half kneeling position. Then we're gonna take the foot out at about 45 degrees. You can go wider, but make sure that your knee is able to stack over the foot and the foot is able to maintain full contact in the floor. I'm gonna find my tucks here. Just that original tuck and untuck position. And then working again, keeping this fairly dynamic, finding this motion. And then I'm gonna keep that tucked position, keep myself fairly stacked as I follow the toes and the knee, moving on this diagonal. And I'm gonna glide out and come back in. Notice I didn't lean, I just followed that knee. My whole center of gravity moved in the same direction toward where that knee was moving, and I maintained that stack, shoulders over hips. You can play with different angles here with both of these, so both the tuck and untuck, and then we sustain the tuck, and then we glide. But I would start off at about 45 degrees and gradually work your way into a wider position, being sure that you can maintain knee over foot and foot maintains contact. So if you're starting to get into shapes like this where the foot's collapsing and the knee's dropping inwards, maybe your hip can't give you that shape and you're gonna narrow that up a little bit. Okay, do this on both sides.